Hello everybody, my name is Tactical Legos, and today we're going to be building the Estes, if the glare will not show it, the Estes Black Brant II, which is a 1/13 scale model of the Black Brant II, which was a Canadian sounding rocket, which was, I believe the original Black Brant was developed. I'm not 100% sure about this. I'm going to clip y'all on the tripod while I say this. Was originally developed to be a test for, like, intercepting ballistic missiles. So, like, the interceptors for that. But then the Black Brant II, to my knowledge, was the first dedicated rocket specifically built for scientific purposes. And the Black Brant family, it's still in use today. They've got all kinds of different variants of it. And this one specifically was used by the Canadian Space Agency and NASA, I believe. This specific model, like I said before, is 1/13 scale, and it will travel up to 1,300 feet on a D12-5 engine. You can also use a D12-7 and a C11-3, which is probably what I'm going to use. I might even get an 18mm motor adapter so that I can fly this on maybe like a B6 or a C6, depending on what the weight of this ends up being. I'll have to calculate that and figure out if it can. But anyways, this is a advanced level kit, so it should be a little bit more involved than the intermediate kits as far as time and a little bit of effort goes. It's hard for me to say exactly, but I believe this is one of the more difficult advanced kits, because once you get into the advanced level of kits, there's kind of some variants. Like, for example, the Epic 2, which is marked as advanced. It's a 2-stage kit. There's nothing on the back of this, by the way. It is actually quite easy. The only real difficulty of it is that it has some kind of thin fins. Looks like we got our decal sheet there. But then there's others, like the, I'll say this before I keep unboxing, like the Mercury Redstone, which are a lot more difficult than that. But it looks like we've got our 3 balsa fins. Quite thick balsa there. Looks like maybe 1/8 of an inch. Let me check that real quick. Yeah, it looks like 1/8 of an inch thick. Alright. We got 3 fins. So let's set those over here with our... Let's just take a look at these decals real quick, because I'm curious. Looks like we've got quite a bit. Ooh. We got, don't know if y'all can see that, we got some little markers there, and all these black and silver and different things. Interesting. Place that back on there. Got the instructions, set those to the side for a minute. Our main body tube. Got our nose cone, and it looks like some pieces for it's weird though, because in the pictures I don't think we're gonna use that loop there. I think we're gonna like make some strange nose cone contraption possibly. I'm not really sure. We'll have to see. We've got I guess this is gonna... Alright, sorry for that interruption there. But I believe I was saying, I believe that this is, we'll have to see, but I think this might be like a tail cone piece. I believe it's actually literally what it says right here. Yeah, plastic tail cone. Okay. And what else have we got in the bag? A little bag. Looks like it's got our rings for our motor mount and our motor retainer, our parachute and launch lug. Let's go ahead and pop this open, make sure that's all that's actually in there. So I'm not sure. And we'll take a look at the instructions. We'll pop this one open while we're at it too. I think this just has some cardboard tubes and these little plastic things. It's got, looks like a couple different tubes in here. One little tiny guy, one bigger one internal coupler, one small, I guess that's for our motor mount. And then we've got 3 of these plastic little toothpick guys that I think go around like the nose cone. We'll see that here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and open this out for a minute, or open this up. We've got our, this comes with every single one of them. It's your launch site dimensions, warranty. There's the dimensions, or well, there's your dimensions in meters as well. Then I think that's all focused. Some just guidelines for model rocketry, general rules if you're in the US. Of course, state laws can differ, so always check your local laws and regulations. We've got our launch lug. These I'm sure are going to be for our motor mount. I assume we'd put them around this and then it'd go in the tube. This will probably be our motor retainer. Launch lug, I believe I already said that. Our parachute in a separate pack. We will leave that wrapped for now. Yeah, this is what's got me thinking. I saw in a picture this, which is where you would loop this and stuff. It's got me thinking that we're not going to be using this. I'm not sure though. We'll have to see. Let's go ahead and open the instructions. Ooh, quite big instructions. Okay. Here's our parts list. Let's make sure we've got everything. Okay, so an engine mount tube, check. The 2 green engine centering rings. We got our engine block, that's B. Let me grab just a little marker so that I can mark this off. We've got our, there's the short body tube, I saw that while we're at it. Our coupler, saw that. Our little medium body tube. Of course, we've got our long one. We've got our launch lug. We've got our nose cone insert. I've seen that. We've got our nose cone. We've got the parachute. We've got the shock cord. We've got the plastic toothpicks, is what they call those. And then we've got the balsa wood. We've got the plastic tail cone. So, yep, that's it. Okay, so next thing, just before we begin any actual assembly, we want to record the date found on the decal sheet, which, peel this back again, and it's right here. It's hard to see, but it is 083023. 083023. So let's write 83023. And that'll just be potentially important if we end up having to do any warranty claims on this. I've never had to do any warranty claims on any of my Estes products. They've all been flawless so far. Not to say that hiccups cannot happen. So I'm gonna back this camera out a little bit. I know this is gonna degrade the quality of the recording for a minute, but just so we can all get a better look at the instructions together, because these are quite big. So it looks like this is later in the construction process, so we'll flip it over for now. Let's see what we're doing here. Okay, so one of the steps they've got us doing is preparing the plastic tail cone, cutting it apart and getting these 2 parts, and assembling, looks like our motor mount. Yeah, assembling the engine mount. Then putting that in the body tube, marking the body, preparing the fins. Okay, that all looks standard, except we're gonna have some pretty interesting beveling to do there. And then attaching the launch lug. Okay, that looks normal to me. And then, how have we got this nose cone? Okay, so the nose cone looks like it's going to go into L, which will then have K go into it, which we will then use another thing to poke holes into it, or to line up holes and poke them. One of the guides that we'll wrap around. If you've built Estes kits, you're probably familiar. And then Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so then we're gonna couple that on and then put that. So yeah, this little nose cone piece is just gonna be hidden away by coupler. That's very interesting. Okay. So without further ado, I guess we shall get into the actual build process of this. So, looks like the first thing, if I can stop kicking the tripod, I'm going to zoom y'all back in here, since we're not looking at the broad scheme of things anymore. Well, actually, before we do this, I'm just going to consolidate some things, because I always lose my launch lugs if I don't put these. Let's grab this over here. We're not going to need this shock cord for a while, I'm sure. It's probably going to be a good idea to put these little toothpick doodads in here as well while we work on some other things. That way we don't lose them. The rest of the stuff over here is quite large, so we can leave that. And again, it looks like the first step they've got us doing is cutting along this line, in this divot, and then in this divot. Discarding these halves and taking these two pieces. Okay. So let me grab my hobby knife. Excuse me. And you want to be careful doing this because it can be a little bit tricky, a little bit dangerous. We don't have to be perfect because we're going to come back, and they don't exactly show this, but I like to come back with a little bit of fine grit sandpaper, very fine, because we don't really want to change it too much, and we will kind of smooth the surface a little bit. But it is pretty easy to follow along this once you get in this groove, though. So we won't have to, hopefully, sorry, that's off frame. Let me tilt this down actually real quick. We won't have to hopefully do too much sanding work here. It's a little bit awkward because it would help if I had a sharper blade. I would recommend a sharp blade for doing this. I kind of run my blades a little bit longer than I probably should on these X-Actos. I run them until it gets inconvenient, like really inconvenient, or starts hurting my hands. Or it starts giving me bad cuts. You can see, just going around. And there we go. That's what you want to be careful of. See, that's why I was cutting away from me and not doing it a little bit more conveniently, because I knew at the end it's going to slip. So that's what you want to be careful of. So we will discard this piece as it shows here. And I'm just going to show this a little bit closer. We're now going to cut these two lines right here. So we just cut that one. And we're going to cut here and here. And I'm going to do that off camera just for the sake of time. And I already demonstrated what we're doing here. But once again, you do want to be careful because like you just saw, it can slip. And if your fingers, were behind that and in the way, now you've got a hobby knife in your hand, and that's no fun. Nobody likes to go get stitches or have to go put a Band-Aid on, whenever you're trying to build your model rocket. But anyways, I'm going to cut the camera, finish these cuts off camera. We'll come back, clean them up a little bit, and then proceed on to assembling the engine mount and finishing this up. Okay, so off camera, I have separated the E and the F part out, and then these pieces here, which are these little side pieces, we're just going to discard these. I might keep these in my little bag here as scrap, just because sometimes it's always good to keep your backup pieces as scrap, just because you never know when you might need a little bit of plastic or a little bit of balsa for some sort of repair, or even a scratch build. So I'm just going to set these pieces over here for now. And it looks like, or well, let me just grab my marker so I can go ahead and, where is my marker? What have I done with my marker? Here it is. Just so that we can mark that off. In step 2, we're going to take part A, which, if I remember correct, is our engine mount tube. Knocked the camera. So we're going to take this, and then part B, which is our engine block, and they're showing it going in here and flush with the edge. And this, whenever the engine, fires, it's going to prevent the engine from just shooting through the rocket, but it's going to leave a gap so that the ejection charge can fire and send our parachute out. So what we're going to do is take a bit of wood glue, and it's always nice to have a little skewer, or you can take a scrap piece of balsa to do this. I usually use a scrap piece of balsa, but I've just got this skewer right now. I'm putting some glue on it right now, just dipping it in the thing. And we're just going to put it on the inner edge here. Just a nice little bead. It's a little bit thick there, but that's okay. Just try and draw it up a little bit. Now, ideally, you don't want it to extend so far down in the tube like I just did it. You want it to be more, oops, that's off camera, on the entrance like this. Get a little bit more glue now so I can keep bringing this around. Just a little bit extra. Smear that around. And then we're going to take this and insert it while twisting it. I like to angle it down a little bit. It's already grabbing nice. We're just going to make sure it's flush. Pressing it down and checking. Then I'm just going to take my pinky finger in there, run it through, and just pull out some of this excess glue, because I've put quite a bit too much, in all honesty. Which I am famous for. If there's anything I'm going to do, it is too much glue. And that's okay, because wood glue is my friend. It will shrink as it dries. So even though currently there's a little bevel down in there, or a fillet, if you will, it will shrink down pretty flush, and our engine will fit nicely. So I'm going to give this at least 15 minutes before I stress that at all. Ideally over 30 minutes. We can still proceed on to the next step, it does appear though, which would be to attach it flush with part E using some plastic cement or super glue. And you do want to use plastic cement or super glue here, because you do not get a very good bond on plastic with wood glue. Who would have guessed? I just launched my piece. Who would have guessed though? Wood glue does not work for plastic. Okay. So I'm going to take my super glue here. And actually, before I do that, I've forgotten that I was going to just really quickly take a little bit of very fine, this is 320 sandpaper. Well, let me grab a bigger piece to start off with. And I'm just gonna knock that down a little bit. I'm gonna take this internal piece and gonna knock it down slightly, not a whole lot. Just enough to make it look a little bit smoother. Yeah, and that looks a lot better already. Just a little bit more. That ought to be good. I'll make sure you get all the dust off there before we glue that. And this is important, make sure that your engine block is on the opposite end of where we're gluing this. So we're going to take a little bit of our super glue, and this time we actually are going to do it for real. First, let's just dry fit this. Okay, actually, interesting. It's not a, I don't believe it's going to fully go on. I believe it's just kind of squishing down in there. We'll just, yeah, there's no way that's supposed to fit through there. So we actually are going to be putting it on the inside here. Interesting. It might be easier to, no, I think it would be easier to come from here. It's just going to be hard to get this on film. I'm just going to put a nice bead of this super glue down and in there. And then as I put it in, I'm going to twist it. Try to hold it nice and firm for a couple seconds. And quickly sacrifice my finger to wipe off a little bit of extra. Ooh, that poor finger. Shouldn't have put so much. Learn from me. Don't put as much as I just did. You saw that big old glob I put in there. Put a little bit less than that. That's pretty good though. Okay. Oops, that is not very centered now, is it? It's okay, this part is not necessarily as structural as some others. Let me just reintroduce some more air into that. Hold it firm again for 10 more seconds. And again, learn from me, make sure that it's centered while you're holding it firm the first time. I might have to re-glue this, I don't know. Let's see how that... Yeah, let me put a little bit more glue on that. Let's see what happens if I... Now, let's do it again the other way. Try just a little bit less this time. Okay. Take two. Let's get it really smeared around while I push it in so that we don't have as much excess. And I'm just going to really quickly come through and wipe out some of it. And then screw the excess. We're just going to focus on centering it while I hold it. And I am going to, off camera, just hold this for about a minute just to ensure that my messed up glue job here works good. I'll be right back after that. So our next step here is going to be to assemble this little tiny body tube onto here. And again, we're going to use some super glue. make sure that's still aligned. It is. Okay. Stick our super glue. We're gonna put it once again along the inside edge. That way, hopefully what smears we don't have to mess around with our finger. Gosh, I'm doing a great job at glue application today. And the second I start doing it good, it's off camera. Sorry, y'all. There we go. I'm putting this a little bit thicker than normal on purpose. That way it'll hopefully slide on. Okay. Now it's important to keep twisting and be quick while you do that. I just panicked because it kind of got snugged a little bit there. But that's okay, because I got it on in time. There's a little bit of excess right there. There we go. Okay, now we're just going to let that dry for just a second. Not very long. This will be just in time for us to explain our next step and cross off what we just did. But next, we're going to take piece F, which is another plastic piece, and again, we're going to put some super glue. It says to put it on the, like, it almost shows like it's putting it on the outside edge, but really, it'd probably be a little bit better. What they're trying to say is to put it on the inside, but that's going to be a bit difficult. I'm probably just going to have to put it on the outside, because that's a pretty tiny place. If you can, it would be beneficial for the reasons we just talked about to put it on the inside of that tube. But I'm just going to try to put it on like this little lip here. And yeah, this is bi-directional, so it doesn't matter exactly which way we put this. So that hopefully most of the smearing doesn't squish out whenever we squeeze the parts together. But hopefully it'll still have enough grabbing room. We'll see how this works out. Oh, and before I put that on, just right here, they don't show this in the instructions, but I'm gonna put kind of like a little bit of a thick zigzag just to give kind of like a thick little glaze, just to give this little internal ring that's in there something to grab onto, hopefully. Oh, and I just stuck my finger right back in that glue. It's okay. Oops. See, and that's what I'm talking about. There we go. If you're quick, you can sometimes break the bond and save your butt. I messed up there, but that worked out. That's what I was talking about, being quick, because it'll grab if you're using super glue. It's one of the bad things about super glue for certain applications. Okay, I think I see why they didn't show that on the instructions, because that actually doesn't get close enough to the body tube. Never mind. So that little super glue squiggle I just did in there was pointless. We just wasted glue. Okay. Let's mark that off. Next step, we're going to put these little motor retainers just on the edge here. And that's going to be using some wood glue. And hopefully this is centered well enough. I'm going to let this dry just a little bit before I put these on, though. Okay, so as I said before, our next step is going to be to put on these two little retaining rings, just kind of stacked up on the edge. These aren't really retaining rings. Let's pick that little edge off there. If I can, it'll make it a little bit nicer for painting. There we go. Don't have one on this one. Okay. So we're going to grab our wood glue again, because again, this is a cardboard to cardboard installation here. We're just going to do these one at a time, I feel like, so it would make sense. run a bead around here. And if there's excess, that's okay. I'm going to cut a little bit extra just on purpose, just to ensure that this gets nice and strong bond. This is a little bit unnecessary. And I'm going to be a little bit even more unnecessary and potentially waste a bit more super glue. And just on this little guy right here. Just a very thin amount, just to hopefully, if this bottle will let any glue out. Just to hopefully dissuade any separation of my bad glue job over there. Again, this is not in the instructions. I'm just doing this for shits and giggles. This might be a mistake. There we go. Alright, now let's put one of these on. Now quickly, before this attaches to the paper towel, wipe it through, just to remove the excess super glue. You can get away with this if you're quick. Just never stop the paper towel. It's just like the circular movement. The second you stop moving, it's going to get stuck in the glue. Never stop. Once you start, that's the issue with super glue, is once you start putting it together, it has to go, and it has to go. That's pretty much it. It just has to go. And it either has to go, or you have to try your best to clean it off as fast as possible and restart. And that's off frame again. But wood glue's nice because it gives you a lot of second chances. It's not as fast. It takes a while to dry. Sucks when you're waiting on it to paint sometimes, because you gotta wait 24 hours and you don't want to encapsulate it in paint. That's plenty. I'm sure that's smeared around even enough. So that's the only real downside to wood glue in my opinion. But just press it down nice and firmly. Smear out this little gap here. Put a nice little fillet on us for it. And now we're gonna, or nice little fillet on us for us. Now we're just gonna set this over to the side and let it dry. Okay, so while we've got this drying over here, we can go ahead and pass on this next step, because this isn't exactly very important that we do these specific steps in order, just that we assemble the final product in order. We can go ahead and take our fin stock here, and we're going to take our hobby knife, and you can see these little tabs right here. There's one there, one there, one there, one there, one there. We're just going to go around hunting for these tabs and cut them with our hobby knife. I'll demonstrate on one. And these are quite thick fins, so you might find you have to go through them a couple times, or even from a couple different sides, to get a nice clean separation. I'll go ahead and work on these other ones on this side before I flip it over. This is some quite tough balsa. Either that or my hobby knife is even worse than I thought. Oops. You want to be careful on these straightaways, because balsa can split. It just tried to. What I mean by straightaways is, you see how the grain's going this way whenever you're cutting with the grain? It's kind of prone to split off to the side a little bit. So you want to be a little bit careful. It'll cut easier, but it'll also break easier. here. Spin it around, come get this guy. Oops. Now we'll flip them over and hopefully pop this out for real. I think I got that one. That one definitely got. I think that one's good. I think I got that one. And there we go. Pop the fin out. And once you got it, you see it should just, nice little, should pop it out. Sometimes it takes a couple. If it's flexing, you might have one that's not fully done. But I'm gonna pop the rest of these off camera, and we'll come back and work on our next step. Okay, so we're continuing to let this dry in the background. And I've got all my fins cut out. I'm just gonna pull over one as an example. And, oops, there went my instructions. You can see where we cut it out, we've got these little fins, and some of them are pretty flush, but some of them, like this one, or well no, this one, are kind of sticking out more. So we're gonna take some sandpaper, and again, this is just a 320, it's gonna be very fine, and we're not trying to re-profile here, especially on this edge that we're gonna be mounting the fin. So all I'm gonna do is just very lightly run it across the surface. That's usually enough to just knock that little tab off. Doesn't take much. And for this little leading edge here, I'm going to kind of take my corner here. This is not the best corner because it's got a little thing, but that's okay because it's not exactly going to be directly on it. I'm just going to go drag it back. And if I have to, I can come and just hand sand it a little bit. Just being careful not to change that profile too much. And off camera, I will repeat this for the other two fins. Okay, and now something I forgot to tell y'all to do, which isn't required. This is another optional step, but this is important if you want to hide this wood grain as much as possible. While they are still, I can probably still get away with doing this. While they're still in this thing, you want to take some fine grit sandpaper, just run it along the top here. And ideally you do this before you cut it out. You can do this for a bit longer than I'm going to. And this is not as important if you are just going to be, or if you're going to be doing the scale fins. It's more important, I guess, if you were going to just be doing the sport scale fins, or the sport fins, which we will get into here later, more in depth. But basically there is a option for these fins that is more realistic, and there's an option for these fins that is more durable and simple to build. But anyways, ideally you want to do this step first. But now we've got our fins all out of the balsa, and we've got all our tabs knocked off, so we can proceed on to the next step. Okay, so for our next step, they show us using plastic cement to put this piece in to the main body tube. And both my ends look pretty square, so it doesn't really matter which end I use it, or which end I use. And, okay, dry fit works just fine. And if possible, I'm gonna try to stick some wood glue up further in there, just so I can get it caught on this, while using some plastic cement lower on this to hopefully get a combo glue effect. Now that's not in the instructions, but this hopefully should give us a bit of a stronger bond, which will maybe account for my lack of skills in some other places. So I'm going to put this in a bit farther than our super glue is going to get. Oops, that's off camera. Get a bit more glue. Let it kind of drip down for just a second. Let it spread over. Get a bit more glue because it's not wanting to drip down anymore. And there we go, we came around. Alright. And it's not the end of the world if the super glue and the stuff make contact, because they'll actually kind of, well, the wood glue will help the super glue dry at least, because super glue dries by moisture. So now, kind of in this gap right here, just to hopefully help control how much gets overflown. Just push some along here. And just kind of spread it a little bit, just to make sure we at least get it on that plastic in some places. Okay, and now once again making sure to keep it in motion while we do this. I'm going to put it in, twisting so that hopefully our overflow is minimized. And there we go. Now I'm going to quickly use our paper towel trick once more, or a tissue trick. Quickly slide it, not stopping for more than a millisecond, so that hopefully it does not get stuck to anything. And there we go. We have now got that connected to the main body. I'm going to stand this up in the corner, and probably, well, actually just to prevent the glue from running up into the tube too much, because our motor block here will catch any of the wood glue that drains down into our tube. I don't know if we can, no, it's hard to see. I'm actually going to leave it laying like this. Not that that really matters, but it'll help some of that wood glue, I guess, kind of sink down where it needs to be. Make sure to close up our wood glue. And after we let that dry, we will proceed on to the next step. But our next step here that involves this tube is going to be cutting out this guide here, this top one, wrapping it around the tube, and then using it to mark some fin lines in the launch lug. So let's go ahead and cut this out here. And before we cut this out, you might want to know, we are going to be cutting into this. I noticed that where I'd previously written the date was going to be cut out in actually all three of them. So I just kind of shifted that over there. And if you want, you can run this through a copier and get a copy of that, or your printer, or whatever fancy thing you might have. They do have copies of these online though. Let me move this out of the way so more room. I'm just going to cut this out rough at first, not really trying to get close to the line, just kind of cutting through the middle here so that I can just go ahead and get this out and do my fine cutting on just the part, because it's a little bit easier if you're not trying to do your fine cutting all in one step, especially if you've got a big old instruction booklet like this one. And it's not that big, but you know, for an Estes rocket, this is fairly large for a single instruction booklet. For, like, I think with the Mercury Redstone and a the Little Joe 1 when I did those. Those were more complex kits like this as well. They had a couple different instruction booklets. This one just has a single one. And if you've got a crease, it sometimes helps to, this isn't exactly perfectly necessary, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it helps to, you know, fold that crease back out a little bit. Now we're going to come back, and as accurately as possible, I'm going to start on the sides here. This part with the little gray part doesn't matter if you get it as accurate, because this is our overlap zone. That's why it kind of looks like the no parking area or something like that. But you do want to try and get, it's not as important on this one, but it will be on this one here, on this bottom edge, to get this as straight as you possibly can. So you might want to use, I'm not sure, I don't know the exact term, but you know, like the, you put a piece of paper on it. The teachers all have these, and it's, it almost reminded me of like a guillotine as a kid. It's got a big blade with a handle on one end, and it pivots up, paper goes in, then the blade comes down like this. I know that's a terrible demonstration, but if you know what I'm talking about, those can get you a really straight edge. I do happen to have one, but I'm probably just going to freehand it on all of these, just because as long as I'm paying attention, I just started to mess up there. Not had too much difficulty cutting straight. Straight enough to at least, you know, get it lined up good enough. And the reason it's going to matter more or less on this one is because we're just going to be putting it in the middle of the tube somewhere. On this one, though, you'll notice, talking about this guy here, we are going to be cutting that out and using that and lining it up with this little seam, which is going to be where that coupler goes into this piece for the nose cone, and then cutting holes in it, which we will use to insert our little plastic toothpick guys that will be these little things. So if you want that to be as perfect as possible, you do want to try and get that bottom line flat on that one. But like I said, this one, it's not exactly as important to get spiffy, I guess you could say. But anyways, once we get that cut out, I'm going to take a piece of masking tape. And I like to use masking tape because I know it's not going to be very likely to rip the skin off of this body tube. And as the instructions show us, we're going to put this towards the lower end. That just helps these lines to be more accurate down where they really matter. I'm just going to paste that on with a small piece of tape. You don't want to get it too big, you just want to have it enough to hold it firmly, because we don't really want to change the outer diameter of this tube as much as we possibly can avoid. I'm just going to off camera grab another piece of tape, have it ready, stick that on my finger, get that ready, and we're just going to pull this firm around the tube, getting it as flat as we possibly can, as tight around the tube as is reasonable without, sorry, that's off frame, risking tearing anything. You can get it pretty tight, and then you see we're going to line up each of these little lines here. Make sure this one over here lines up, and it does. So now I'm going to take my tape, and you can put the tape on first and kind of use it to pull it as well. Tape that in place. And now I'm just going to put, this isn't necessarily, well, necessary, but just some little locking pieces. Make sure I'm not covering up those end lines though, because you want to have those ends exposed. I'm talking about these right here. There we go. And this is worth noting too. We've got fin lines where there's 2 of them, because we're going to be aligning the, let me pull out one of them here, the fin in these grooves like that, and then you've got a launch lug line. And now it will be, you know, easy to differentiate because there will just be a single line and then the rest of them will be double lines. But don't forget, you got a launch lug line to put on there too. I have forgotten that step before, and it's not exactly terrible. You just kind of have to wing your launch lug location. And that's all right, that's fine, but you know, it's more convenient if you can remember. So next step, we're gonna grab a pencil, and we're gonna take this, and I'm gonna demonstrate on the launch lug line just for the simplicity of time. But for these, you are going to do it for each of these. So like a tick there and a tick there, and then at the bottom, you know, again, a tick there and a tick there. But I'm just gonna do it on this single line just for the sake of time. So we're going to, sorry, I'm sure my voice is quite loud right now because I'm leaning right over the camera. As accurately as we can. Don't worry about extending these too much. Just make sure that they are accurate and noticeable. Now we're going to flip it around and repeat the same on the bottom. And there we go. All right. So I've got all my markings made. So now it's time to pull this off. And our next step, after we take this little guide off, and we'll just discard this afterwards. I mean, you could keep it if you want, but there's no real reason to at this point. After we take this off, our next job is going to be to extend these little lines we made. So let me show you what we mean here. So we just, you know, put the little tick marks on each end. Now we're going to use some sort of straight edge to extend them. Now they show us using a door frame, and they also, Estes sells what they call a fin, or not a fin, but a body tube marking guide, and it's basically just a bunch of straight edges of different sizes, which is nice. I do not have one of those yet. I do intend to get one. What I usually use is one of these, just a right angle square. I do have longer ones of these, which I could go get out of my shop that's outside. Well, not really my shop, but my father's shop. But I'm not going to be able to use this just because, well, I could, but it would be more tedious, I feel like, because it's not as quite as long as I would like it to be to get for our forward launch lug. It would be long enough for our fin lines, but our forward launch lug is going to be somewhere up here, because if we look further in the instructions, it's going to be about halfway up our tube here for that forward launch lug, because we're going to split that launch lug into two parts, actually three, but we're not going to talk about that yet. Anyways, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do something I have not done before. I'm going to actually use the door frame like Estes tells us to. So I'm going to move the camera to the door frame and we'll see how this goes. Okay, so I've got y'all at the door frame here. And I'm sorry, this probably is not the best lighting for this, but I'm going to try to show y'all as best we can. Maybe over on this angle would be a bit better for seeing what I'm actually doing here. And I don't think y'all can see this, but what I'm basically doing is I've got a tick mark here and there, and I'm lining it up with this edge of this door frame here. I'm going to line up my pencil. And while holding it straight as I possibly can, there we go. I'm going to repeat the same thing for this other little set of tick marks. And these aren't the launch lug ones, so I don't have to go as high. And hopefully y'all can see that's what we're going for in the end. And for our launch lug line, we would want it to extend up higher just like this one. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that real quick if I can find it. Okay, here we go. There's my launch lug line. It's lined up at the top as well. That one does need to go down onto this bottom half too, because our bottom half is going down there as well. There we go. And now off camera, I will repeat this for the other two fin lines. Okay, so I finished marking my body tube here. So let me grab my marker here and go ahead and cross off that. We can just go ahead and, so we finished all those. So our next step here, oh Lord, the fins. I have not been looking forward to this. In fact, I've been debating just skipping that for a while and going on to finishing the nose cone. But you know what? I'm gonna have to do it sooner than later. I'd rather have something enjoyable afterwards. And the reason I say enjoyable is because I am unfortunately not gonna be able to forgive myself if I do not give these scale fins a try. So, if you're having a bit of a hard time understanding what you're looking at here, let me pull out a fin. This, over here, this little half, you can just ignore that for a minute, is the, let me zoom y'all in, the sport fin option. So you'll see that the leading edge is just beveled, like that. Let me zoom y'all out just a little bit, actually. So you could just round off this leading edge, or just bevel it like they've got it angled for all three of the fins, and then be done. And I really wish that I could get away with just doing that, but unfortunately my brain is not going to let me. So what I'm going to do is the scale style. This is the more realistic style. So we can now just ignore this side. Let me just set that there. Because we're going to need that if I'm doing this. Because you may notice here are our side profiles. So our little end tip, which is this face here, it's gonna look kind of like a diamond, and so is this end. And then you'll notice this part here is gonna be the only part that maintains the full width, as we can see there. And it tapers down to just barely being the full width for just a split second there. And then these sections here, all of this is going to be shaved down until it mimics a point, like an aerofoil. Let me go grab this one model that I completed previously, a lot smaller of a model, but it had a very similar fin design that I tackled and somehow did a decent job on. I'm hoping I can replicate that, but it should give you a decent idea of what we're talking about here, because it's a little bit, I mean, if you stare at it for a minute, it makes sense, but it's easier to just look at what you're actually trying to do in person. So I'll be right back. Now these are not perfect, but you can see we've kind of got like this multi-angle shape. That one's one of my better ones. Here's another good one. Now you can see some of them are slightly messed up. They're not exactly perfect. So you can get away with some errors, but you do want it to be close. I'm a little bit scared because these are quite large. It's going to be quite a small angle to sand in. I really, as much as I hate to say it, I don't have much guidance on this. My guidance would probably be, if you can handle it, just round them off, because it is, well, there's only one way to say it, a pain in the ass, unless you really enjoy setting down and sanding, which if I'm in the right mood, I can. But honestly, right now, I'm kind of not. But I'm going to tough through it anyway. But just to give y'all, I guess, a little bit of a guidance on how I'm going to start this. And after that, I really don't know. It's just sanding as best as I can imagine. This is to scale, luckily, for this one, so you can compare it, hold it up, and this is going to be how you're checking all your different angles and things. But what we can do to get started here, just line it up and then kind of pull it back a little bit. Then we'll realize that this line is actually, it's a bit hard to see, but you can see where that angle ends. So that one's going to be pretty easy to mark. Once again, line it up, pull it back just slightly. Try my best to mark it as accurately as possible. I'm going to repeat that on this other side. Okay. Now that I've got that, I can take my straight edge here. Sorry, that's just now realized it's zoomed in. I hope y'all could see what I was doing there. I was lining it up, pulling it back, and marking where these little lines are right there. It's a bit hard to see my marks, but got one there too on that point. Now what I'm going to do is hold a straight angle. I'm going to have to hold it up to it, unfortunately, because of some sort of straight edge between the points. Once I've got it lined up, I'm gonna make a line there. Now I will repeat to my other point here. Sure. Okay. And now I'll remember that this half up here gets tapered that way, this half that way, and now I will have to try my best, because unfortunately they didn't make two sides of this, so you can't flip it over. I'll have to try my best to just go straight down. And pull it along. I'll do the same thing over here. This one will be easier on this corner because I can just kind of ride right up along this little edge right here. Because that's, again, in that little divot right there where the angle changes. This one we'll have to be a bit more careful with, though. It's okay, though. Okay. Now, once again, I'm gonna put some eggs on this. All right. So, what I would recommend, if you're gonna attempt this, is to just take it slow and not move too much material at once. Because, you know, for example, if I was to right now, and this is gonna be a little bit of my working process, just kind of do that for a minute, and now I'll look at it and see what angle am I looking at. And right now, for example, it looks like I'm getting a little bit more on this nose edge than I am on the base, which is actually what I'd end up wanting kind of in the long run, but I need to get more over here. So anyways, you know, you work a little bit and then see what you're doing and try your best to adjust for what your goal is and constantly be checking it. And really, other than that, I can't help you too much on doing that, because I just kind of sand with my intuition, and I highly doubt any of y'all want to sit here and watch me sand for, I'm sure, the multiple hours it might take me to get this. Because like I said, my best advice is just to go slow. This is a bit too high grit sandpaper, to be honest. I'm probably going to only use this at the very beginning, and then I'll drop down to 220 and 320. But my main advice would be, if you don't mind having a slightly unrealistic rocket, just do these. This is going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of pain. It might be worth it, but it's such a small detail that will also make these more fragile, which I will address once I come back and have these done. Okay, I just wanted to make a little update. Whenever you're marking these, if you're doing the, y'all can't see that, if you're doing the scale option, you actually probably want to start at the bottom of your mark instead of starting at the top and then dragging it down like I was talking about. Drag it up instead, because then when you flip it over, you're not having to rely on dragging it down accurately, because you can gauge more easily this way, and then of course have it perfectly lined up at the bottom. So I was wrong when I first said that. Once again, don't always do as I do at first. Sometimes I'll come back later in the video and say, oh, that was a mistake. But that's why, again, this video, as it'll always say in the description, is not meant to replace the written instructions. I'm just showing y'all how I've done it, and maybe how I've gotten away doing it in some stupid way. But anyways, back to what I was doing, and when we come back, I'll have these fins finished. Okay, so that took forever, but not really forever. It only took a couple hours, maybe like 2, but got them all done. They're not perfect. I can get them lined up, but they're close enough. So our next step, if we look at our instructions here, is of course to attach these bad boys. So let's move this out of the way for now. Pull this into frame. So I've got this fin alignment guide from Estes here. And this isn't required. You can just freehand these if you want to. I've just recently acquired this, so I've been using it here lately. Oops. That one scooted too far. And I had to modify it from the normal schedule by extending this a little bit, because these fins are swept, but not swept enough for the double casing method, which is in the instructions, which is where you tap a empty one. Just making sure this all aligns right now. Spin this around, make sure it's somewhat aligned over here too. It looks all right. Okay. So I'm gonna get my super glue. Oops. Let me get this tripod more stable here. I'm gonna zoom y'all out a bit, so, well, not that much. Okay. There we go. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. My super glue here. I'm just gonna put it it'll come out. A little bead of super glue along this. And you can use wood glue too. I just like to use super glue because it tacks it on a bit faster. And I have the patience of a 2-year-old. And we will secure it more in depth with wood glue, wood glue fillets here in a minute. So I'm gonna align this as best I can before I put it on. Now I'm gonna try to make sure it's as aligned as possible while I get this on. Make sure this is flat in the base. Press it a little bit. Now, take this clip, put it on there. I think that looks good. So now I'm going to leave this for about 5 minutes just to make sure this sets nicely, and then I will spin it around and tack on the next fin. Repeat the process of waiting 5 minutes, do the next one, and then I'll probably, before I proceed on to the wood glue fillets, I'll give this at least probably 30 minutes to dry total since the last super glue application. Ideally, I'll probably give it an hour or so. I might start working on the nose cone assembly, but we won't have to wait immediately because after we tack these on, we are going to be tacking on the launch lugs, and then we'll wait for the fillets because we'll want the launch lugs to have fillets as well, and we're going to tack them on with super glue. You could tack them on with wood glue as well. I've done that. You can use wood glue for most of this. Like I said, I'm just using super glue in places that I can get away with it because I have the patience of a 2-year-old. But anyways, I'm going to put these on off camera, and we'll come back and work on the launch lug. Okay, so I'm in the middle of putting my fins on, and I figure might as well go ahead and prepare the launch lug because, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to have to cut this. Where's the part where we do that? Here it is. If I can not hit the camera. Okay, so we're going to cut 2 1/2 inch segments out of this and discard the leftover and use those 2 segments. So we can go ahead, get our launch lug, set the instructions to the side for now. I'm gonna just use this just because it's right here. You could use a tape measure, or you could use anything, really, to be honest. As long as it can measure in inches or millimeters or whatever conversion. What is the millimeter conversion on that? Do they have it listed for my metric people? 13 millimeters, so 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters is what you will be wanting to cut each segment. So I'll be going, marking at 1/2 inch, and then 1 inch. So for y'all metric folk, you would be marking at 13 millimeters and 26 millimeters, or you could just mark them one at a time and cut them one at a time, but I kind of prefer to just do it at the same time. And then I find it easiest to take the hobby knife, and y'all probably can't see this that well. I'll demonstrate on the next one easier. To start, taking the tip and just plunging it down in, and that helps to get it started. And then after that, you just kind of want to, you can use scissors for this too, but kind of crunches it. There we go. Clean up this edge just a little bit. Take some really fine 320. There we go. Now we'll repeat the same for this other one. I just went ahead and stabbed all the way through it, didn't I? There we go. You can, if you want, just kind of saw it like this. And that works too. And again, just You don't want to sand this too much, though. You don't want to start unwinding it or messing it up. And it looks like, let me just double check these. This one's a 1/2 inch. But I've cut this one a little bit short. And that might be a testament to why you should cut them one at a time and mark them one at a time. But the good news is, if I can keep it on frame, Estes has, as you can see, given us extra. So I can come back, just cut it again. And if you don't end up needing to use this extra, do not discard this. I wish I had kept some of the excess launch lugs sometimes, and actually that has been what saved me a couple times whenever I have lost a launch lug. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, that's why I've made a habit of always putting them back in the bag immediately. Speaking of, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm even going to keep these 2 little extra short pieces because these are still usable, in all honesty. They're just a little bit smaller. So really, they gave us enough room for nearly 4 of these 1/2 inch segments. I'm going to zoom y'all back out. I just dropped one of them. But anyways, I'm going to put these back in my little bag here, just so that I do not lose these. They're already trying to run away, see? And I'm going to finish the fins, and I'll come back, and then we will try to attach those. While I'm at it, I'm going to keep getting ahead of myself and go ahead and proceed on to the next set of steps, which is going to be preparing the nose cone. So the first step is we're going to take this, what's that doing in there? We're going to take this piece L and attach it to our nose cone here. And we're going to do that with some plastic cement or some super glue, because again, we're doing a plastic, we're joining something to plastic. So wood glue is not going to work there. So grab my super glue again. Let's get this connected. I'm just going to put a bead along the inside edge here, just like that. I'm probably putting a little bit too much, but that's alright. That's what I always do. Too much glue is my middle name. And we're going to put it in there, rotating it as we do, so that that glue spreads nice and even. And then we're going to set this to the side and let that dry. Might be better standing up. Let that dry for about 5 minutes, just so we don't disturb the super glue while it's bonding. Really, you could wait just about 30 seconds to a minute or so, and it'll probably already be good now, to be honest. If you tug on it, yeah, it's pretty good now. But I like to be safe and give it 5 minutes just to be sure, because sometimes you don't get a very good bond instantly. But anyways, we'll come back after I let this dry for a little bit more, and then we'll put this coupler in there with some wood glue. It'll be going like that. I honestly should have mentioned this before we did this step, but that's what I get for getting ahead of myself. You might want to, you see this little line right here? That's a seam from the molding process. You might want to take some fine sandpaper and just work on that seam a little bit. That way it shows up a little bit less when we paint. You can see it doesn't take much. I've already made it disappear, mostly. And of course, a couple coats of paint later can help fill this up, but it helps to just knock down that general ridge. There's even a little bit on this top piece. You'll notice, so up here it's actually kind of recessed, when down here it's more pronounced outwards. So it's a little bit difficult to get that upward part, in my opinion. I always have difficulty. I don't worry about it too much. That's probably why I forgot about it. The trick is do not use too high of a grit of sandpaper, because you'll end up honestly kind of worse off than you would. Even the 220 grit I found is too high. I really like this 320. The 220 is okay if you're really light with it, but I tried it with 150 one time, and oh lord, it left some deep gouges that showed out even after several coats of paint. But anyways, you might want to do that before you assemble this. It'll be just a little bit easier. That wasn't too hard though, to be honest, but I did run the risk of scuffing up my tube a little bit. But anyways, now it's time to put in this coupler here. Get my wood glue here, my little applicator skewer. You can use a piece of scrap balsa. That's what I usually use, but I just got the skewer right now. And we're just gonna put another bead on the inside of this, except this time it's gonna be wood glue. And you could use super glue for this, but wood glue is gonna give us a slightly stronger bond. And that's what the instructions call for. You could also use regular white glue for some things like this, to be honest. Even Elmer's glue can be strong enough for a lot of these things, for low power rocketry. I just like to use Titebond 2 because this stuff is quite strong. I've got several shelves that are held completely together just by Titebond 2. But anyways, we are going to twist as we insert once more. And push it till it stops. Not quite so sure I got a bond that I'm happy with there. I might want to put a little bit more wood glue, because that's how I am, more glue. More glue. There we go. That's way too much glue. That's exactly how I like it. Just pull some of that glue out and put it around this edge. Now, this is really not the best idea if you're using anything other than wood glue, what I'm doing right now, because this wood glue will shrink, but most other glues will not. So if I just put a very thin bead, and I'm going to take most of this off, but just a very thin bead of wood glue around this edge here, ideally it will shrink almost entirely down into there, or seep, kind of absorb. Again, it's good to have a rag or a tissue of some sort with you that you can use to wipe your fingers off. And there we go. Now we've got that coupler in there. So I'm going to set this to the side now and leave that to dry for at least 15 minutes before I mess with the next step, and ideally over 30 minutes, just to help prevent any runs. And ideally, you really don't want to be stressing that joint majorly for the next 24 hours. Though I find after about 2 hours, they're pretty strong. But, you know, just as a precautionary standard, that's what you want to do. So next up, we will attach our launch lugs. But I will be right back, because I'm going to get a piece of a 3/16 inch, or well, actually not a piece, because I forget I can't get mine apart. It's just going to be the entire rod. But I'm going to get a 3/16 inch launch rod. That way I can use it to align these and make sure they go on the rocket straight. And I'll demonstrate that here in just a moment. Okay, so I've got my fins attached, and I've let them dry for a bit. So our next step, well, why am I uncapping the super glue? We're going to be putting the launch lugs on. And if we look at the instructions over here, zoom y'all in, you can see one of them is going on the center of this little lower guy here. And then another one is going to be 7.5 or 7.5 inches or 19.1 centimeters from this little line here to the center of the next launch lug. So we're going to measure 7.5 inches or 19.1 centimeters from there, and we're going to make a mark real quick. So I'm going to move y'all over here, grab my tape measure real quick. Use a ruler, might honestly be more convenient. This doesn't have to be perfect, but from there. About there. So about right here will be the center of our forward launch lug. So I've got my launch rod here. I'm going to use that for alignment aid. It's going to be a little bit difficult because this is a very long one, but I'll make do. This will be alright. First thing I'm going to do is just put it on there. And then I'm going to take my super glue, because I'm trying not to get it stuck anywhere really, other than on the rocket, and we are going to reinforce this later. I'm just going to put a little dab like that, not a whole lot. And now I'm going to use this to position it. I'm going to do the lower one first. If I can move my tape measure out of the way. I want to make sure that I get this as aligned as possible. Okay, now I think it's set. So I'm going to hold it as best as I can while I pull this out. Okay. It's a little bit crooked, but that's okay. And I messed it up, but that's okay. We can try again. Tiny bit more glue. Not a whole lot though, because we've already got this thing pre-soaked. Now we're just going to take two. Make sure that's in the right spot. Hold it on. Let's see. Okay. Now I'm going to let that set for about 5 minutes, and then I'll come back, and I'm going to let this set honestly for probably about 10 minutes, just because we are going to use that to help line up the next one and make sure that it is also straight with this launch lug. So I'm going to let this set for 5 to 10 minutes, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, I don't know, depends how I feel, and we'll come back and do the second one. Alright, so I've given that launch lug a little bit to set, so we're going to go ahead and put on the second one here. Hopefully this one will be a little bit faster. Won't have to have 2 tries on it. So once again, oops, a little bit of glue. It's probably a bit too much, but that's okay. Just means I'll have to hold it longer. And I'm going to angle this in a way that's a little bit easier to get this guide rod through. Trying. Oops. Okay, where's my tissues? There it is. Accidentally got a little bit of that super glue on the thing. Probably a blessing in disguise though, because I had too much anyway. Again, trying to line this up as best as I possibly can. Press and hold it. Slide this out. Hopefully without destroying my back guy here. There we go. Now we can look down it, kind of like a peep sight. It's probably not gonna, maybe if I tilt, oh, darn. That was not intended. Maybe if I tilt y'all up, not let y'all slam. Kind of look down at like a peep sight and see if it looks straight along the body too, which it does. Looks fairly straight. I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna let that sit over here and let that cure. All that super glue work we've just done, we'll let that cure for at least 15 minutes. I'm probably going to give it over an hour before we will proceed to putting some fillets on this thing with some wood glue. Okay, so now that we've got that done and we're letting this dry for a bit longer, we can go ahead and work on our next step, which can go ahead and be continuing the nose cone. I'll zoom y'all in for a second. So we've already done these 2 steps, if you've followed along in the order that I've done it. So our next step here is to cut out that little other cutout thing, the guide, wrap it around, and then cut out along the holes. So let's go ahead and do that. Zoom y'all back out. Grab my scissors. And again, just like we did before, I'm just going to cut it out rough at first, just so that I can get a good hold of it for fine tuning. Okay. And again, this little area over here isn't as important to get it exact. Let's get that crease out real quick. Let's move these out of the way for just a moment. And this edge doesn't have to be perfect either. You do want to get this edge pretty good. But if it's not perfect, it's okay. Same thing with this one, but this is the one that you want to try your best on. If you were going to try your best on any of these edges, it should be this one. And that's because this is what the edge that we're going to use to space this. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but if you want it to be as scale as possible, then you want to try to get that nice. But it's okay if it's slightly off, because it's not going to be the end of the world. If, oh no, your little, God, my hand is orange. I look like an Oompa Loompa. Oh no, the little toothpicks are 1 millimeter too high, or 1 millimeter too low, or half a millimeter, or some stupid shit like that. But this is going to line up like this. Just like we did with our fin guide. I'm going to grab a piece of masking tape. Small one. Just a little strip here. If I can get one. It's being a bit stubborn right now. Gosh, come on. I can't see it, but I'm really struggling off camera right now trying to get this tape. Okay, got a piece that will work. Shorten that a little bit. Get off me. Get off me. Okay. Now, we're going to line this up to this bottom edge as best we can while we stick this on. And again, if it's not perfect, it's okay. Now I'm going to grab another piece of masking tape. Just go ahead and have it ready. And we want to make sure that it's thin enough that we're not, at least for the first piece, covering up. See, that's pretty close, but I can get away with it. But if that was any closer, I'd be covering up these lines right here, and we wouldn't be able to line it up whenever it comes time to pull it around and line up those little lines, you see? Because we're lining up those lines. And if that tape was any bigger, you see I slipped there, but that's okay. We wouldn't be able to see those. I think that's pretty good. And now that I've got it locked in place, I'm just going to take a little, if I can get the right sizes, some little security pieces, just to help prevent it from possibly coming up or undone while we're in progress of cutting. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our hobby knife once again, and the instructions show us sticking it in here, and I should probably not have my hand underneath that while I'm doing that, and then twisting it. That's what they show us doing. I guess, is that gonna work? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, it is gonna work actually. Okay. So we're just gonna continue that all the way around, trying to center our little drill hole as much as we possibly can with that little guide. Let's see if it'll fit now. Not quite. Let's keep drilling. That looks like it will now. It will. And we're gonna go repeat this same process for this hole and what? 1, 2. Oh, there's only 3. Oh, I thought I was looking for the 4th one. Okay, well, we'll just go ahead and do this one. Thought there was 2 more to do. I'm used to rockets that have things in 4. See how that does. That already looks pretty good. Not yet. Just a little bit more. that. And yep, that's gonna work. So we can go ahead and pull off this guide now. And this, I don't think is in the instructions, but I'm just gonna take some 320 grit sandpaper. Honestly, finer would be better. And just come over and knock that a little bit. This one looks like it's kind of caved in and not been drilled out as nicely. So I'm just going to come through and very lightly, no pressure on it, just come through and bore that out. Same thing with these other ones if they're looking, that one looks nice. This one looks like it might have been my first one, if I had to guess. So a little bit of sanding to knock down any burrs that we might have left behind on the top. Come by and kind of pick it with our fingernail too, if that helps. A little bit more drilling. Pick. And there we go. So, I believe our next step, if we look at our instructions, here we go. Before we proceed on to our next step, actually, we're going to have to cut down these little guys to a length of 2 inches or 5 centimeters. So we will do one of these on camera. From this angle, the direction we'd want to do it. We're cutting it down to 2 inches or 5 centimeters, it said. I've got a mark there. And there we go. Y'all couldn't see that, darn. Okay, well, now that I don't know if y'all could see the part. I should have zoomed the camera out. I'll just re-demonstrate on this other one. Sorry, that's my fault. Me and my Oompa Loompa self. So, 2 inches. It's gonna be right there. That's how I got it. Then I came through, and I'm just going to use this one as a guide now that I've already got one, just to make sure that my links are the same. And they are going to be. And I just press through it, rotate, press, and there it went. Now we can repeat the same process with this guy. There we go. And I just found out that it kind of works to just press and roll it like that. And it just sliced right through it. So now we've got these all trimmed down to 2 inches or 5 centimeters. I'm just going to take all these, put them in a pile over here. Safekeeping, kind of clean up my workspace because I've got a little bit of a mess going on here. Get some of this tape out of the way. My trash bucket. There it is. Okay. So now our next step, we're going to put those pins in and put glue on to, let's see if y'all can see this, both the inner wall where the pins come through and then where they will touch on the nose cone, which you can see here. I'll demonstrate with one of these. Grab our super glue. You will want super glue or plastic cement because again this is a connection that is using plastic. So I'm gonna put some glue right here and stick it through. that's, should have dry fit that first, but that's okay. Okay, now I'm gonna hold it in place because that worked quite well actually. I'll come back and put some more glue in just a second to reinforce it. See if I can pry my finger off of there without, there we go, without breaking that bond. And now that I've gotten that through, I'm just gonna come over and reinforce it a little bit. Sorry about that. Okay. Just making sure that's holding in place. This is a bit difficult because my fingers want to stick to it every time I reach in to press it down, but I think we've got it. I'm trying to press it down onto this right here so that it can blow some of my breath on it because super glue hardens with moisture. It's kind of dry out here too. Oops. And I believe we've got it. So we'll just want to repeat this for the other three. And then we'll come back, and I think I might further reinforce this little junction here with some epoxy once we get all three of the needles installed. Okay, so off camera, I have gone ahead and used some epoxy and just put some along where they connect to that plastic piece in the center and reinforce these little edge on the outside and inside with more super glue. So I'm letting that dry for a while before we continue with that. And for the sake of time, I already began the fillets. However, I've left one fin set and the launch lugs that I will demonstrate on what we were doing here. I'll take my wood glue here, get a little applicator stick. Just put a decent amount there. Come back with my finger, smooth it over. And it's always a good idea to have some tissues nearby when you're doing this. Get a new one ready. Get some more glue. Just a little bit more like that. And then put some down here as well. Get some more glue. Put a little bit more down here. That ought to be enough. Now, it's not really detrimental if we get it on these plastic parts, but we don't really want to because it's not really going to help us. Because plastic and wood glue do not bond. So that's why I'm trying to skip that gap and also on there at the back. If you wanted on the back here, you could run a fillet of some other type of glue, which I may end up doing. I probably won't, to be honest. But if I feel like it, I might end up doing that. So I'll get some more glue here. Wipe off some of this excess here. sometimes I'll roll up a little piece and kind of just to clean up that edge right there. And this will mostly sink in. You notice how this is already starting to sink in? This will mostly sink down flat. So if I end up having any gaps or a fillet that doesn't look quite strong enough, I'll come back after it's dried for 30 minutes to an hour and put another layer on. But now I've got, let's clean this up just a tiny bit more. Now I've got all the fins filleted. So now we're going to fillet our launch lugs here. So let me, where did I put my longer applicator? There it is. I prefer this one. Get some more glue here. Let's actually get a bit more than that. A bit more than that. There we go. And I'm just going to demonstrate on one for the sake of time. But just like the fins, we're going to put a decent amount and then smooth it over with our finger. That was quite a bit too much, but that's okay. And we'll leave it like that, let that dry. Come on the other side, do the same thing. And now sorry, that was off frame. There we go, we got the fillet for the launch lug. Same thing, I'll let this dry, and if I need, I'll come put another layer on it, and I'll repeat the same thing for this rear launch lug. Now here's what I'm talking about by gaps opening up. So after I let this dry a bit more, I'll probably come back and I'll definitely put another layer on that section, and we'll probably see some more gaps open up as it continues to dry and shrink. And we'll just come back and put another layer on that off camera until it, you know, looks like a continuous fillet after it dries. Now we're not really going to build up much of a radius on this fillet, but we don't want to have any gaps like that. I mean, it's not the end of the world if we do have just like a couple small ones, but it'll help our paint look better if we can fill those. Okay, so I've got our fillets over here drying and stuff. We're still currently working on them a little bit, but you know, instructions for that are over with. You know, we're just continuing what I already demonstrated until it looks nice. So our next real step here is going to be number 7 for prepare nose cow, and it involves putting this layers of masking tape. It says approximately 6 layers, and the reason is we're trying to put this in here, but you'll notice it's kind of loose. It's not a snug fit. So unless we had like some glue that was some crazy gap filler, we're gonna have a hard time getting that to fit unless, I guess, we put 6 layers approximately of masking tape on it. So let's try that. So I can get it on straight. So here goes 1. Working on 2. Here goes 3. Sorry, that's off camera. Here goes 4. Here goes 5. And here we are at 6. Let's tear that off. And let's see what this fits like. Pretty good. but just to be safe, I'm gonna add just a little bit more. Let's try that. I might add just a wee bit more. Okay, that should be good. Yeah, that ought to work out just fine. So now our next step is going to be to trim away the excess. So we'll take our hobby knife, find our edge here, our fingernail I find helps. I'm just gonna rough cut it a little bit at first. Sorry, that's off camera again. Doing really bad about that lately. Sorry. Just trim that. Make sure that stayed flush to the edge. Come back and you be careful cutting towards yourself like I am right now. Ideally, you would be more cutting away. I'm just accepting the risk for the convenience of this position currently, which is not ideal. And this doesn't have to be perfectly clean. That'll be okay, because we're just going to glue this all up with a bunch of super glue anyway, which is our next step. They have us using what looks like Elmer's glue or wood glue, but honestly, I don't trust wood glue to make a strong enough bond with masking tape. I just don't. So we're just going to use super glue. This ought to also be quicker. So as before, we're going to put a good bead along the inside edge of what component we're sliding something into, and then while maintaining motion, it's a little bit oblong because mine's a little bit out of square, so I'm having a bit of trouble getting it to fit in initially. There it goes. Okay, spin it around. Now let it sit. And there we go. We have now prepared our nose cone. The only real assembly steps left to take is going to be installing our shock cord into the main body tube and putting our parachute on and tying it all together. We will next install the shock cord tube once I get finished with the fillets, or not shock cord tube. We will install this shock cord, but we are going to wait on putting the parachute on and tying it all together until after we're painting. That will be in part 2, and I'll show y'all why I like to keep them separate until after I've painted the full rocket and got it fully decorated. But anyways, I'm gonna let this dry, keep working on the fillets, and once I'm done with that, we'll come back and install the shock cord. Alright, so our next assembly step here is going to be to cut out the shock cord mount and glue this shock cord to it, and hold it until it sets, and then we will place it into the body tube. So first, you come over here and cut out this little kind of long trapezoid thing, just like we cut out all the other ones. We'll cut it out along these lines, and for the sake of time, I'll do that off camera. Okay, so I've got my trapezoid here, whatever shape you want to call this cutout. And what we're going to do, as the instructions will show us, we're going to go ahead and pre-fold it. You don't really have to, but they suggest you do. And then we're going to lay the shock cord with the fat end towards the long end of the shock cord and the skinny end towards the short end. So, like this. Let me move some of these things out of the way. So like that. And of course, gluing all that together, one fold at a time. Now they show us using wood glue for that, or white glue or something, and I guess that would work. I've always used super glue though, because I do not trust wood glue to make a proper grip on this rubber. I don't know, maybe it does do just fine, but I've used super glue for the entire time without issues. If you were going to use wood glue, because it would work good with the paper, I would at least put a little dab of super glue on the start, at least, or maybe on here. But what I'm going to do is just gonna spread this around. You don't want it real thick here, just enough to squeeze all around. Lay our shock cord in there. And you do want it to be a little bit from that first line, because we don't want to fold directly onto it. Oops, it's kind of meandering with me, but that's okay. Increase that. And we're going to hold this for just a second. Going to press it down a little bit. Don't have to hold it set just yet, because we are going to stick a little bit more glue underneath this guy. Oops. Spread this glue around. There we go. Now fold it down once more. And while we're doing this, we want to give it a little bit of a curve to it, because this is going to go inside our body tube. You don't want to press your fingers down for too long in one spot, because they will try to get stuck on you. And it is a little bit, this isn't detrimental if you do it wrong on this exact part, but it is good practice to put, as they show in the instructions, the folded end. It's a little bit hard to see, but the end that's got the solid piece of paper, you want that to be outside, and the end that has these two little creases, you'll see, you know, I could peel that apart right now. That's two pieces of paper onto the body, so that the glue's holding that even more. So speaking of that, we're going to go ahead and do that. And I like to put mine on the same side as the launch lugs, just because, why not? And the important thing about this is you want to make sure it goes at least 1.5 inches down in the body, because this is going to be going in there too. So if you put your shock cord mount right here and then try to insert this, now it's not going to fit. So we got to make sure this goes down deep enough into the body, at least about that deep. I usually try to stick it as far as my finger will let me, like that, pretty much. But first, you can use wood glue for this too. I've used it before on this step, no problem. And we're just gonna lather this guy up pretty good. You do want this to be a good solid attachment, because if this comes loose, then you know your rocket body is going to be falling, and the only thing attached to your parachute is going to be this rubber band and your nose cone, and that's no good. But we want to put it upside down so that it's going as far down in as we can. Trying not to get the glue everywhere. I'm doing a terrible job of that right now. There we go. I'm going to press it. It'll want to slide a little bit at first if you've put a little bit too much like I have, but that's okay. Just means you need to hold it for a second longer. And what I'm doing here is I'm kind of going like pressing on it. You see, I just got my finger stuck. If you leave it too long, you're just kind of doing tapping presses. Tapping presses. Because see, my finger's getting stuck already. Might need to let it sit for just a second. We'll try a new finger. That finger is getting too much glue on it. Tapping presses. It's a little bit hard to do. Just gonna keep doing this for a minute. Looking down in, making sure that I'm happy with how it looks. What I'm doing now is kind of some dragging motions just to pull some of that excess glue, if there is any. Let me go down in there with my thumb and press it a bit harder. Gosh, it's a big enough shock cord mount that you'd really like to get 2 fingers, but this body tube, at least for me, is not big enough to reach down in there with my thumb or with 2. Actually, I can just barely reach it, but I think we're good. Let me shine a light. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. Got a little bulge right there. I can press down for a second. Try that for 1 more second. I think that's pretty good. Let me just really quickly sacrifice my finger just for the love of the game. I would recommend using gloves if you're going to do this part, but being very careful if you're going to use gloves and do this part. And I'm just going to smear some super glue all over the top of this thing. And I do this and sacrifice my fingers because I am a little bit insane, if I'm going to be honest with you. And I just go smear it around. I might have to reach in with my longer finger, get all the way down to that bottom there. And this just helps to ensure that it all gets welded down to that surface. Now, is that required? No. Am I going to regret this later whenever I have to clean my hands with acetone? Yes, but it's a small price to pay for a little bit of mental insurance when I launch this rocket. And then we'll watch it go into a tree anyway. I shouldn't have said that because now it's going to. But we'll let this dry. And this is going to be it, pretty much. I'm going to do one optional step, which I like to do whenever I've got fins like this that are kind of profiled. And that's basically just going to be smearing them with super glue on the surface, a light smear of super glue. But we're pretty much done constructionally. At this point, well, I haven't finished my fillets yet. I've still only did the 1 round that I showed y'all and haven't come back, but that's besides the point. At this point, you could go ahead and tie this here with a double knot and then loop your parachute through, as is demonstrated on the page that we were just working on down here. You loop the lines through, loop them through the chute, pull it tight, make sure they're even, and double knot the rubber band onto it, and then you can pack your parachute and launch this thing. But I am going to save that for part 2 because I find it easier to paint this nose cone and most other nose cones separate. I'll tie a string to this usually and hang it, and then I'll be able to paint it. Or a lot of times I'll also just mask this bottom part, which I'm going to do even if I use a string, and then extend it to use like some sort of stick or a tail to hold it like a handle. And then we can use this shock cord as a built-in string to dangle this from while we paint. But anyways, when we come back, I'm gonna give this a bit to dry. I'll show you what I mean by slathering these fins, and this is completely optional. I just think it would strengthen them. It's gonna increase the weight, but I feel like it would give these a little bit of strength against cracking. Because, you know, wood glue tends to soak in to the wood grain, especially with balsa. So I figure, you know, it'll act almost like papering the fins, which is whenever you take a sheet of paper and glue it to the fins, which also helps add rigidity. I feel like adding a thin layer of glue would have a similar effect. But anyways, when we come back, we'll do that. Alright, so I accidentally got carried away. I meant to only do 2 of the fins off camera with this method I was talking about, which is slathering some wood glue along the fin surface. You can see just a thin layer, and then it dries like this. And I do that because it gives a little bit stronger fins on some of these more tapered designs that have more angles to them, like this. This isn't really necessary, I just sometimes do it if I feel fancy. But with that, we have finished the construction of the Estes Black Brant II, aside from connecting the parachute and nose cone to the shock cord. But I'm going to wait to do that in part 2, where we will paint this thing and put on the decals. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in part 2, where we will get this thing finished and looking a lot nicer.